The smell of antiseptic still lingered in the air when Alina shifted slightly on the narrow hospital bed, cradling her newborn closer to her chest. Her body ached in ways she hadn't known were possible, exhaustion pulling at every muscle, but none of that compared to the hollow feeling in her stomach. She had imagined this moment so differently. There were supposed to be flowers, quiet tears of joy, maybe even an awkward smile from her mother-in-law. Instead, there was tension thick enough to choke on. The door swung open without a knock. Galina Ivanovna entered the maternity room as if she owned it, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her eyes swept over Alina with open disapproval before landing on the baby. There was no warmth in her gaze, no curiosity, only calculation. "So," she said coldly, folding her arms, "how long are you planning to stay here?" Alina blinked, confused. The doctor said 2 more days. The delivery was difficult. Galina snorted. Difficult. Women have been giving birth for centuries without making a spectacle of it. My son took time off work for this. Ridiculous. Alina's fingers tightened around the blanket. She was too tired to argue, too vulnerable to defend herself properly. Since the moment she'd married into this family, she had learned that every word she spoke would be weighed, twisted, and often used against her. Still, she hadn't expected this, not here, not now. "You should leave," Galina continued, her voice rising. "Take the baby and go to your mother's place. I won't have you draining my son emotionally and financially." Tears burned in Alina's eyes. "This is his child," she whispered. "And my grandson," Galina snapped back. "Which is exactly why I won't let you ruin him." The words hit harder than any slap. Nurses passed by the open door, glancing in but choosing not to intervene. Alina felt invisible, small, like she was being erased in front of her own child. "That's enough," she said quietly, though her voice trembled. "Please leave." Galina laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You don't get to tell me what to do. You were a mistake from the beginning. My son was never meant to end up with someone like you." Alina lowered her gaze, tears finally spilling over. She thought of the months she had endured in silence, the subtle insults, the constant comparisons to some imaginary, better woman. She thought of her husband, who always promised to talk to his mother but never did. Maybe Galina was right. Maybe she really was alone. Then, suddenly, another voice cut through the room. "Step away from her." Galina froze. Her confident posture stiffened as if struck by lightning. Slowly, she turned around. Standing in the doorway was a man she hadn't expected to see for weeks. Tall, broad-shouldered, his expression calm but unmistakably firm, he filled the space with quiet authority. It was Victor, Alina's estranged father, a man Galina had dismissed years ago as insignificant and irrelevant. "You," Galina muttered. "What are you doing here?" Victor walked in without answering, his eyes never leaving Galina. He placed a bag of fruit gently on the table beside Alina's bed and leaned down to kiss his daughter's forehead. "I'm here for my daughter," he said evenly. "And my granddaughter." Alina stared at him in disbelief. She hadn't even told him she was in labor. Seeing him now felt unreal, like a lifeline thrown just as she was about to sink. Galina scoffed, but her voice lacked its earlier bite. "This is a family matter." Victor finally turned to face her fully. "Exactly. And you stopped being family the moment you decided cruelty was acceptable." The room went silent. Even the baby seemed to sense the shift, settling quietly in Alina's arms. Galina straightened her back. "You have no right to interfere." "I have every right," Victor replied calmly. "I know exactly who you are. I know how you control people, how you humiliate them until they doubt themselves. You tried it on my daughter, but it ends today." Galina opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked unsure. Victor continued, his voice low but steady. "You will not harass her. You will not threaten her. And you will not separate her from her child. If you try, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are." Galina's face paled. Her lips moved, but she remained silent, stunned. Alina watched the exchange with wide eyes. She had never seen anyone stand up to Galina like this. Not her husband. Not anyone. A nurse cleared her throat awkwardly from the hallway. "Is everything all right in here?" "Yes," Victor said without turning. "Everything is under control now." Galina grabbed her purse with trembling hands. "This isn't over," she muttered weakly. "It is," Victor replied. "For today. And for her." Galina hurried out, her heels no longer confident, her shoulders hunched as if the weight of her own words had finally caught up with her. When the door closed, the silence felt different. Lighter. Alina broke down completely, sobbing into her father's shoulder. "I thought I was alone," she cried. "You were never alone," Victor said softly, holding her. "I should have been here sooner. I won't make that mistake again." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alina lay quietly, her baby sleeping peacefully beside her. For the first time since giving birth, she felt something close to peace. The future was still uncertain. Her marriage might not survive this storm. Her relationship with her mother-in-law was beyond repair. But one truth was now clear. She was no longer powerless. She had support. She had a voice. And somewhere else, far from the maternity ward, Galina sat alone, replaying the scene in her head, unable to speak, unable to move past the moment when her authority shattered in front of everyone. Sometimes, it takes just one unexpected visitor to change everything. The corridor outside the maternity ward was unnaturally quiet, broken only by the soft beeping of distant monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes. Inside room 312, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Marina lay propped against white pillows, her body weak and sore, her newborn son sleeping against her chest. Every breath she took felt like a reminder of how fragile she was in that moment. This room was supposed to be a place of healing, but instead it had become a battleground. The door opened sharply, without warning. Lydia Petrovna stepped inside, her face set in a familiar mask of disapproval. She didn't bother to greet Marina or glance at the baby with any tenderness. Her eyes were cold, calculating, as though she were inspecting a problem rather than visiting a new mother. "So," Lydia said, placing her handbag on the chair, "I hear you caused quite a scene during the birth." Marina frowned weakly. "The labor lasted 16 hours. The doctor said." "Excuses," Lydia interrupted. "I gave birth in half that time and didn't make everyone suffer. My son had to miss work because of you." Marina swallowed hard. She had learned long ago that defending herself only fueled Lydia's contempt. Since the wedding, nothing she did had ever been good enough. Too quiet, too emotional, too fragile. Even now, after giving birth, she was being measured and found lacking. "I came to talk about something important," Lydia continued. "You and the baby will not be coming to our apartment." Marina's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said," Lydia replied flatly. "This situation is temporary. You are not fit to raise a child in my home. You will go back to wherever you came from." The words echoed in Marina's ears. Her arms instinctively tightened around her son. "He's your grandson," she whispered. "And I'm your son's wife." Lydia's lips curled into a thin smile. "Wives can be replaced." Marina felt tears rise, but she refused to let them fall. She had promised herself she would be strong for her child. "You can't do this," she said, her voice shaking. "This is not your decision." Lydia leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Everything in my son's life is my decision. And you were a mistake he will soon correct." The door remained open, but no one stepped in. The world seemed to have shrunk to this one cruel woman and the crushing weight of her words. Marina felt smaller than ever, like a guest in her own life, unwanted and disposable. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway. Slow, confident. They stopped at the door. "Is this how you treat a woman who just gave birth?" Lydia straightened, irritation flashing across her face as she turned. The man standing in the doorway was tall, his hair streaked with gray, his expression calm but unyielding. Marina's breath caught. It was Alexei, her husband's father. Lydia's face drained of color. "You weren't supposed to be here," she said sharply. "I came as soon as I heard," Alexei replied, stepping inside. His eyes moved from Lydia to Marina, then to the baby. For a moment, his expression softened. He approached the bed and spoke gently. "May I?" Marina nodded, stunned. Alexei carefully brushed a finger against the baby's tiny hand, his face filled with emotion. Then he turned back to Lydia. "I heard everything," he said quietly. "That's impossible," Lydia snapped. "This is a private family matter." "It stopped being private when you started threatening her," Alexei said. His voice never rose, but it carried authority Lydia clearly wasn't used to hearing. "You will not throw her out. You will not separate a mother from her child." Lydia laughed nervously. "You always were weak. This girl has manipulated you already." Alexei shook his head. "No. I simply see what you refuse to see. You confuse control with strength. The words landed like a blow. Lydia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her usual arsenal of insults seemed useless. Alexei continued, his tone steady. For years, I stayed silent. I let you dominate every room, every decision. I told myself it was easier that way. But watching you speak to her like this ends that silence. He turned to Marina. You are not alone. If you and the baby need a place, my home is open to you. No conditions. No fear. Marina felt something inside her crack, and tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Not from humiliation, but from relief. Lydia's hands trembled as she grabbed her purse. You're choosing her over your own family. She demanded. I am choosing decency, Alexei replied. And if that threatens your sense of power, that is your problem. A nurse appeared at the doorway, sensing the tension. Is everything okay? Yes, Alexei said calmly. It is now. Lydia took a step back, her confidence gone. This isn't finished, she muttered. It is for today, Alexei said. And today is all she needs. Lydia left without another word, the sharp echo of her heels fading down the hall. When the door closed, Marina exhaled a breath she felt she had been holding for years. Alexei pulled a chair closer and sat beside her. You did nothing wrong, he said softly. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. Marina looked down at her sleeping son. For the first time since his birth, she felt safe. The future was uncertain, and difficult conversations lay ahead. But something fundamental had shifted. Power had changed hands. Silence had been broken. And all it took was one unexpected guest to leave a woman who had ruled through fear completely speechless.